There's a single idea, buried in the writings of a man who advised princes more than 5 centuries ago, that quietly destroys almost every piece of dating advice you've ever heard. It doesn't involve tricks. It doesn't involve lying about your feelings or sending calculated text messages at exactly the right minute. It's one principle, and once you understand it, you'll see why the men who attract women effortlessly seem to do the opposite of what everyone tells them to do. Niccolò Machiavelli spent his life studying power. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the subtle gravity that makes some people impossible to ignore while others, who try 10 times harder, are forgotten within weeks. And what he discovered about influence between rulers and their subjects maps almost perfectly onto what happens between a man and the woman he wants. Here's the uncomfortable part. You've been trained your entire life to believe that affection is proven through effort. That if you like her, you should text first, plan everything, stay available, always say yes, and put her at the center of your world. You've been told this is what a good man does. And yet you've probably watched it backfire, maybe in your own life, where the harder you chased, the colder she got. The more available you became, the less she seemed to care. That's not bad luck. That's psychology. And Machiavelli understood it 500 years before any dating coach put it on a screen. So before we go deeper, ask yourself something honestly. Do you actually want to understand how attraction works at the level most men never reach, the level where she pursues you? If so, this is exactly the kind of breakdown I publish on this channel. Subscribe now, because what I'm about to walk you through is just the beginning of mastering female psychology and becoming the man others orbit around. The principle nobody wants to accept, let me state it plainly, the way Machiavelli might have if he were sitting across from you. Your attention, your time, and your presence are not infinite gifts to be poured out freely. They are resources. And resources that are abundant lose their worth, while resources that are scarce become precious. Make yourself endlessly available, and you become wallpaper. Make access to you something that has to be earned, and you become the thing she thinks about when you're not around. Never be completely available. Never be entirely predictable. Never hand over all of your time, all of your focus, all of your energy to one person who hasn't yet learned to treasure it. This is not coldness. This is not punishment. This is the natural posture of a man whose life is too full to revolve around anyone. Now, this flies in the face of everything sentimental you've absorbed. We're told that love means being there always, that devotion means dropping everything, that closeness means total access. Machiavelli watched these very behaviors produce the opposite of loyalty. He watched advisors who were always at the prince's side get replaced. He watched the eager, the accommodating, the ever-present become invisible. And he watched the ones who held something back, who remained slightly out of reach, command respect that lasted for decades. Think back across your own experience. Picture the relationship, romantic or otherwise, where you were the most generous, the most flexible, the one who always rearranged his schedule, always answered instantly, always made the other person the priority. Did that constant giving make them cling to you tighter? Or did they slowly start to assume you'd always be there, and stop noticing you at all? For most men, the answer stings. The more they gave, the less it was valued. And if you believe the fairy tale that generosity automatically earns love, this makes no sense. But if you understand human beings the way Machiavelli did, it makes perfect sense. We crave what's hard to reach. We treasure what's rare. We grow indifferent to whatever is always sitting there, waiting for us. This isn't a character flaw in women, or in anyone. It's wired into how the human mind assigns value. Abundance feels cheap. Scarcity feels expensive. Your presence obeys the same law as gold and diamonds, it's prized only when it isn't lying around everywhere. Machiavelli put it simply, people value things in proportion to how scarce they are. He was talking about gold and grain, but the rule doesn't stop at physical goods. It governs your attention just as ruthlessly. But scarcity is not a game. Here's where almost everyone gets it wrong, so listen carefully. Strategic scarcity is not pretending to be busy. It's not staring at her message and forcing yourself to wait 3 hours before replying while your stomach twists with anxiety. That kind of manufactured distance is fragile. She'll feel the performance underneath it eventually, and the moment she does, the whole thing collapses. Real scarcity comes from somewhere else entirely. It comes from having a life so genuinely full of purpose, ambition, friendships, work, training, growth, that your time is actually limited. The man playing games has to remember his own lies. The man with a real life has nothing to remember, because he isn't acting. He's busy because he's building something. He's unavailable because he's living. And that authenticity is impossible to fake and impossible to resist. That's the foundation everything else rests on. Without it, what follows is just theater. With it, what follows becomes who you are. Why this actually works, the mechanisms underneath. It's tempting to dismiss all of this as manipulation. Let's make sure you don't, by understanding why it works on a psychological level. Because once you see the machinery, you'll realize you're not tricking anyone, you're simply removing the behaviors that quietly kill attraction. The first mechanism is uncertainty. The human brain finds guaranteed outcomes boring and uncertain outcomes electrifying. It's the same reason a slot machine grips people while a fixed interest savings account doesn't. When you reply instantly every single time, when you're free every single time she asks, you become a guaranteed outcome. There's no anticipation, no spark of will he, won't he. But when sometimes you answer right away and sometimes hours later because you were genuinely occupied, her mind lights up every time your name appears. She doesn't know what she's going to get, and that not knowing is what keeps you in her thoughts. The second mechanism is the cost of obtaining you. The mind takes shortcuts to judge worth, and one of the strongest is this: whatever takes effort to get must be worth more. When you're always reachable, always free, always saying yes, being close to you costs her nothing, and her subconscious files you under cheap. When your time has to be planned around, when your attention has to be earned by being someone worth your while, the price goes up, and so does your perceived value. The third mechanism is the human hunger for a challenge. People are energized by pursuit and bored by certainty. We chase the summit, not the gift handed to us at the bottom. The man who gives everything immediately has removed the climb entirely. There's nothing left to win, because he already surrendered it all. The man who keeps a part of himself reserved keeps the challenge alive, and the challenge is half of what holds her interest. The fourth mechanism is opportunity cost. When you're always available, choosing to be with her costs you nothing, and she senses it. But when your time is clearly valuable and limited, every hour you give her means you chose her over a dozen other things you could be doing. That choice carries weight. It feels like a real gift, because it is one. The fifth mechanism is mystery. Curiosity is one of the most powerful forces in human attraction, and it dies the instant a person becomes fully known. When you narrate your entire day, account for every hour, and lay your whole life open, you become predictable, and predictable becomes dull. A man who keeps some of his world to himself stays interesting precisely because there's always a little more to discover. Notice that none of these require you to lie. Every single one is simply the natural byproduct of a man who has his own life and refuses to dissolve into someone else's. This is the part that separates the men who get it from the ones who keep struggling. And if it's landing for you, do me a favor, hit subscribe. I'm building this channel for the small number of men who actually want to understand power, presence, and female psychology at this depth, instead of recycling the same surface-level advice everyone else is drowning in. How to live this out without faking anything. Understanding the idea changes nothing if you don't know how to embody it. So let's get practical. The thread running through every one of these is the same word, real. None of this works as a performance. Build a life so full that your scarcity needs no maintenance. Have goals that have nothing to do with her. Pursue work that matters to you. Train your body. Sharpen your mind. Keep friendships that exist completely outside the relationship. When your time is genuinely consumed by things you care about, you never have to manage your availability, it manages itself, honestly. Keep social circles she isn't part of. Don't fold your entire world into hers. Have your own friends, your own nights out, your own corners of life she doesn't occupy. This isn't secrecy, it's wholeness. It gives you natural time apart and keeps you from becoming an extension of her. Answer on your rhythm, not hers. When a message comes in while you're lifting, working, or out with friends, reply when you're done, not because you're playing a waiting game, but because you actually have something in front of you that deserves your focus. This quietly teaches her that your attention is real and your life is full. Say no without writing an essay. When the timing doesn't work or you simply don't want to, I can't that night is a complete sentence. You owe no one a detailed defense of how you spend your hours. The man who explains and overjustifies signals that he feels obligated to. The man who states his boundary plainly signals that his time is his own. Protect interests that are yours alone. Keep hobbies and pursuits she has no part in. These give you real time away and, just as importantly, keep you growing as a person rather than calcifying into a role inside someone else's life. Don't make her your entire emotional world. Have other people, friends, mentors, family, who carry some of your weight. When one person isn't responsible for meeting every need you have, you're naturally less dependent, less available, and far more grounded. Hold a little mystery about your time. You don't owe a minute-by-minute report of your day. I had plans, I was working on something, I was busy, these are enough. The compulsion to explain every gap broadcasts that you feel accountable to her for your own existence. You're not. Be unpredictable in good ways. Occasionally be free when she braced for a no. Sometimes reply instantly when she expected a wait. Now and then, surprise her with a yes she didn't see coming. That variability is what keeps the whole thing alive, because she can never quite predict you. Again, none of this is a script. It's the shape your behavior naturally takes once you're a man with somewhere to be and something to build. What this actually gives you when you live this way, specific things start to happen, and not only in romance. This is the architecture of respect in friendships, in work, in family, in every arena where people decide how much you're worth to them. You stop being taken for granted, because your presence can no longer be assumed. You hold your power inside the relationship, because the person who needs it least always has the most leverage, and a full life means you need it less. You stay interesting across years instead of months, because there's always more to you than has been revealed. You build healthy interdependence instead of suffocating dependence, two complete people choosing each other rather than two halves clinging out of fear. You attract a higher caliber of person, because those who respect independence are drawn to it while those who want to consume you are repelled, which is exactly the filter you want. You keep your identity intact instead of dissolving into someone else. And when conflict comes, as it always does, you negotiate from strength, because your willingness to walk away is backed by an actual life worth walking back to. Machiavelli's insight cuts against every comfortable story we tell about love, and that's precisely why it's true. We treasure the scarce, chase the uncertain, value what costs us something, and ignore whatever is endlessly free. Your time, your attention, your presence are no exception. The man who is always there fades into the background. The man whose life is genuinely full stays in the foreground. The man who hands over everything at once is forgotten. The man who holds appropriate boundaries is respected and pursued. So build the life. Pursue the goals. Keep the boundaries. Answer on your own clock. Say no when no is the truth. Become the kind of man whose time is treasured rather than assumed, and watch the entire dynamic invert, until she's the one reaching for you. Machiavelli saw this pattern half a millennium ago, and it hasn't aged a day, because it was never about a particular era. It was always about human nature. The men who grasp it become magnetic. The men who don't spend their lives confused about why all their effort earns them so little. You now understand the principle. The only question left is whether you'll have the discipline to live it. If this is the kind of thinking you want more of, subscribe and stay close, because mastering female psychology and the quiet mechanics of power is exactly what this channel is built to give the men serious enough to want it.